Hey guys, what is up? I'm trying to make this video a couple times. I really don't know the direction of how I want to go with this, but I am going to talk about Neil Gaiman. And I'm going to talk about the article that came out. I'm not going to get too much into the information in the article because, to be honest, I really don't want to talk about, how he likes to use his butter. If you've read the article, you know what I'm talking about. If you've not read the article, I'm gonna just leave it at that. And there's things to take away from this story. There's things to take away from this story dealing with, famous people. And there's things to take away from it in the sense of a fan. How you should interact with these people and how you should perceive these people. And then there's the element of it, which is, some of the creations he's made, what do you do with that? And do you still use some of the things that he's done? And I think this goes into maybe DC Comics as a whole, for some of the things he's done for DC Comics, how do you use those things in the future? And should you use some of those things in the future? Like, for example, the Endless, the characters that are the Endless. How do you use those characters in DC? And should you still use those characters in DC? And so, anyway, let's get into this though. Because if you don't know who Neil Gaiman is famous for being one of the best well-known fantasy authors there really is. And he is responsible for American Gods. He is responsible for Good Omens. He is responsible for, most and notably, probably, is Sandman. Now, Sandman, I'll be honest, I have not read the comic of Sandman. I have listened to the audiobook of Sandman, the audible representation of Sandman. And I loved it. It was fantastic. James McAvoy playing Dream was incredible. What's his name? The guy who played in not The Statesman, the Mark Millar comic that they made into a movie. Can't remember it, but the actor that was the lead in that, he does a fantastic job as John Constantine. It's really good. So if I ever recommended anything from his work, which if you don't want to support him anymore, I totally understand that. But the Sandman Audible is fantastic. And I've wanted to read the omnibus of Sandman, and I just haven't gotten to it. Because, those things are expensive. But he's been accused of a lot of stuff. And he's been accused of a lot of things for a while. And so that's one of the things I want to get into is stars. Should you trust Hollywood? Should you trust these famous people? Should you trust semi-famous people, writers, authors, artists, movie makers, directors, actors? I would say no. Don't view them as anything better than you. Don't view them as godlike beings. Appreciate their work and leave it at that. They're human beings, and we all fall short. We all mess up. Someone who he's probably my favorite at the moment. He's not my favorite comic book writer, but he's written my favorite comic book story. And currently, the books that he writes, I am currently still getting, even though I know he personally would hate my guts, is Mark Waid. I know Mark Waid would hate my guts. I don't vote the way he would want to vote. I don't talk about politics here, but just being honest, me and him would not align on basically anything. And I do think he probably needs therapy. I've heard him have interviews where he's talked about politics and things before, and he doesn't seem like a healthy person. Okay? And I know that he thinks the worst of me in real life. But I love his books. I love it. I love his stories. I don't think he's a healthy person, like I said. But I still like his stories. Kingdom Come, I will eventually have that in an absolute form one day. It's my favorite comic book of all time at the moment. I love Kingdom Come. I love that story. So, and he's done some crappy things to people, but he's not done what Neil Gaiman's done. So I don't want to confuse the two. But I'm just saying that none of these people are, godlike beings. They're all human beings. They all fall short. And there's nothing to perceive them higher than you in any kind of way. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because in the article, it really does seem like Neil Gaiman put himself above the people that he abused, supposedly, in this article. If it is true that he did the things that they say he did, it does seem like he put himself above the people around him, wanted them to call him master. And no one's a master over you unless you allow them to, or, the indescribable fate one day that we meet when we die, which I would say is God. You may say is something else. But, those are the only things that are our masters. Everything else, we choose our paths in life the best that we can. And, it's sad that if this is true, what happened to these girls, it's really, really sad. But never look at these people other than what they are. They are here to give you entertainment. And if you enjoy the entertainment, great. And if you don't, that's all you don't owe them anything. You don't owe these people anything. So, the best thing I could say for the common person, reading, some of these famous people, besides not viewing them above you, view them as someone just like you, and this is probably to the artists and the writers and all these people as well, which I'm about to transition to, so I'll make the point for both. Guard your heart, guard your mind, guard your soul, right? Be careful the situations you put yourself in, Now, let's get into the artists, right? Future artists, a lot of these writers and comic book artists were very quiet about this story. The story's been around for quite a bit of time. It's been talked about. It should have been a known thing, but people kept it under the radar because Neil Gaiman believes in the right things, and Neil Gaiman is the top dog that's over fantastical writing. He's like, he's like the number one guy. So a lot of these stories should have been known a long time ago and should have been talked about a long time ago. But everyone kept quiet until now we know about it. And so now they're going to talk about it. Which again is another reason why you shouldn't trust some of these writers and artists. Some of these people do not have your best intentions at heart. They're only looking out for themselves. And that is something to keep in mind as you look at people in certain ways. Another thing too, and this isn't a political channel, so we're not going to get too heavy into all that, but since I've already brought up some things like that anyway, and it does deal with this article, Chase character, Chase someone who, doesn't necessarily agree with you on everything, but is a righteous person, and don't view righteous or good character as what they say they believe. How do they treat people? How do they treat others? Do they speak to people with kindness? Do they watch themselves and the environments they're in? We've seen videos where Keanu Reeves is taking a picture with a girl and he has his hand where you can see his hand in the photo. Like, that's showing good character. He's being very watchful. He's being very demure over himself. We need to get away from this viewing people like, okay, this person's a good person because they believe in everything I say. Or this person's a good person because, they say that they're this thing, And it seems like Neil Gaiman got away with a lot of his bad behavior because, hey, I'm pro-woman. I am a male feminist. I am these things. I believe in me too. I. A lot of saying good things, but not actually having the intentions to do good things. And so, I would just say, again, anyone, doesn't matter what political beliefs you have, doesn't matter if you watching this, you may disagree with me on a lot of things, and that's totally fine. But do you guard your heart? Do you guard your mind? And do you guard your soul to the things that are around you? Because people like this will come in and they will take from you. And so, if you're not careful. So, you have to try to be careful. And so that's just my warning. Now, now we've kind of covered that. You know, artists, writers, you know, put yourself, you may not like this advice, and I'm not totally a fan of this guy either, but, you know, Mike Pence, the ex-vice president, you know, he did not, what was it? He does not go and have dinner with people that are not his wife if it's just them two. He's not going to just have a dinner with just a woman at the table, just him and a woman who's not his wife. You may think that's all sorts of different things, but I'm telling you, that is fantastic advice. Don't put yourself in a situation that would cause you to stumble. Don't put yourself in a situation that would cause you to ruin the rest of your life, either by yourself and your own willingness or by something that could get accused of you, period. Right? Seems that he got a little too full of himself, that Neil Gaiman felt a little too confident about what he could and couldn't do to other people, the way he viewed himself over other people, and some of that was probably encouraged by the fact of how famous he was, and eventually doing things that would be considered immoral and wrong, and seems like he needs to be charged with some stuff, you know. But it started by what he took as the praise from all these people, you know. And I would suggest this, writers and artists and people, find someone that you can commit to your life to, get married, have children, and stay faithful. And don't put yourself in environments where you would not be faithful. And that's the best advice that I could give, and I think a lot of these artists need to start paying attention, because it doesn't matter who you are. You know, maybe you're famous enough to get away from it, but the world's different now. And it seems like it's going to get a lot harder for people. Even if they say the right things, which Neil Gaiman says the right things, it's going to get a lot harder to evade these things. And it's a tragedy when the situations that come out about these people aren't true, but it is righteous, and it is your sin getting brought to light when it is true. And I would just say that, you know, you might need to start watching yourself. But let's end it with this question. He put a lot into DC. He's not no like Jeff Johns as far as really establishing things, but he did set up some world building that I think is fantastic. That I think actually getting away from would actually make the DC universe a little more convoluted, and I think he set up some cool characters. Namely, the Endless. I think the Endless are really phenomenal characters. I think Lucifer and all those things are super interesting as well. But he has helped set up a world that I think is really interesting. And I don't think DC should just get rid of it just because of what he has done. I hope that's not what actually ends up happening. You know, they don't use the Endless too much in DC Comics. But to be honest with you, I hope it almost opens the door to let them use him more. Now, they may not want to, because I don't know contractually what they owe Neil Gaiman when it comes to those stories. But I think it's a beautiful story, and I think there's elements of those characters that could still be used. And I just think it gives them the go to, honestly, I think it gives them the go to do whatever they want with those stories without his permission, to be totally honest with you. I could be wrong about that, but I don't know what the contracts are. But for example, you know, they had no problem using Alan Moore stuff, and Alan Moore hasn't done these terrible things that we know of. Alan Moore hasn't done all these terrible things. He's got some wild opinions, but he hasn't gone out and tried to, hurt a bunch of women as far as I know. Watch someone in the comments just drops a bomb on me about Alan Moore. But DC has no problem, keeping that train going. I think there should be no problem with them keeping the Sandman elements of the DC universe going as well, and I think they should continue to do things in that universe. I think maybe don't copy everything he did. Don't abide by everything that he did with it. Feel free to use some elements of it that work and change the things that don't, and do what you want to, because it sounds like lost maybe the right to really make too many statements about what you should and shouldn't do with his stories. I liked, for example, it's Dark Knight's Metal, I think. It's probably the first one. It's where all the evil Batman come in to the DC universe to try to take over and do all the evil stuff. Dream warns Batman, and Dream looks totally different than the way he would look in the Sandman comics. He's not wearing black. He's not, all these different things. He's really a beautiful, type character who comes forth to warn Batman of this great thing that's happening. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. It's really, really cool. Really cool. And I hope that DC finds fun ways to use the characters and doesn't worry too much about abiding to everything that he set forth. I also like the idea of the presence. To me, the DC's presence, that's core DC lore. I don't want them trying to move away from that and changing kind of the way that the systems of DC work, just because how much that character is referenced in something like Sandman. But that's just me. But what about you guys? Can some of the writing and stuff, how do you feel about that? Is that something now? Do you even want to read or participate in some of the things he did? Do you separate the art from the artist? Do you disagree with me as far as, if you're a famous person, what you should and shouldn't be doing? I don't know. Will I post this video? I don't know. I may not touch this. I may just decide to leave it where it is. But either way, guys, let me know what you think down below. And wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, I hope you're having a good one. Peace.